Hi, welcome to Books and Bocadillos. My name is Maria Andrea, and I am here on Halloween night drinking a lukewarm cup of tea because this is the fourth time I try this recording, and I am here to talk about my November TBR slash pile of possibilities. Let's get chatting. So, November is a month that is feeling very slow and very moody. What I mean by that is that it's probably a month in which I have these picks, these starting points of books that I want to read, but I'm going to be a dabbler and I'm probably going to be dabbling from a lot of different books. And sometimes I'm a moody reader in the sense that I like pairings. And so if I'm reading something and I feel like it pairs well with something else, or if I want to juxtapose this work with another work that I've heard of, I'll do that. So, as I'm talking about these books, if any of these books you feel like there's a good pairing for, or maybe there's another book that I should read along as I'm reading this book, feel free to let me know. And I'm always looking for those kinds of suggestions. So, let's get started. For Nonfiction November. Nonfiction November is a booktube event I always look forward to. It is hosted by Olive at a Book Olive, and she usually provides prompts that you can use to select your reading. I'm just going to participate in it by reading nonfiction books, maybe ramping up or being more intentional with my nonfiction reading in the month of November. I'm not really going by prompts. And so I've selected two books that I want to focus on in terms of nonfiction reading. And those books are Bird by Anne Lamott. I've had this on my shelves for years. I purchased this book some time back because there was a reading event. People were going to be reading. I wanted to read this book, and it was kind of like a book club event. I did not get to read this book. I did not get to participate in that book club at that time, but I still really want to read this book. In this book, Anne Lamott gives some instructions on writing and life. I am a writer. I'm not a published writer. I am an amateur writer. I love writing as much as I love reading. My writing is mostly poetry. I've written short stories in the past. I haven't written any creative short stories lately. I tend to be more into smaller works like micro stories, poems, essays. I really could use some advice on writing and life, so I'm looking forward to this. In the back, the portion in the back says, 30 years ago, my older brother, who was 10 years old at the time, was trying to get a report on birds written that he'd had 3 months to write. It was due the next day. We were out at our family cabin in Boulley, and he was at the kitchen table, close to tears, surrounded by binder paper and pencils and unopened books on birds, immobilized by the hugeness of the task ahead. Then my father sat down beside him, put his arm around my brother's shoulder, and said, "Bird by bird, buddy, just take it bird by bird." And so this is the title of the book. I'm really looking forward to this. The second book that I've chosen for Nonfiction November is also about birds. It is Crow Planet by Lyanda, Lynn, Haupt. And the subheading says Essential Wisdom from the Urban Wilderness. David Sedaris blurbed this as a completely charming and informative book on the pleasures of keeping one's eyes open. This book has been on my TBR for a while. I actually meant to read this last year for Nonfiction November, didn't get to it. And it feels like the time is now. Lately, I've had some encounters with crows that are really fun. This weekend, my husband drove us to a Barnes& Noble, and I stayed in the car. I'm not getting into a Barnes& Noble. I'm trying to not spend money on books right now. So I did not get down. I stayed in the car, and while I was waiting, a crow came up to my window and just perched itself on like the rear view mirror and was looking right at me very intently. And And I felt like there was some like I wonder like what is going on? Is there an expectation here? Like I really felt like if this was a being I could communicate with, we would be in communication. But we were just looking at each other, both like mesmerized one by the other. It was so cute, so funny. I wanted to pull out my phone, but I didn't want to scare it. So I just sat there looking right back at it, like our eyes connected. It was so cool. So anyway, I've had some encounters with crows. I live in an area that is really great to live in if you're into bird watching. So in the fall and the winter, we get huge migrations of birds. We get so many birds. It's a great season for bird watching. My backyard is like an aviary. um, and so it's just fun. You drive down the streets and there's like crows aligning the electrical wiring, like from one end of the street to the other. It's so cool to watch. I delight in it. And yeah, I'm really excited. I'm not even going to read the back because it's about crows and their place in our natural habitat in the wilderness and the urban landscape. And this is what I want to read for the month of November. So this is a priority. And I want to introduce a segment that I hope to do every once in a while when a book I'm excited about aligns with the poem I've been reading. So I recently was reading poems from Ada Limon's collection, The Hurting Kind. Ada Limon is a U.S. poet laureate, and I was listening to an interview with her, and it prompted me to pick up her collection, The Hurting Kind, which I already owned. I had on my shelves. I have several of her collections on my bookshelf. And so I picked up The Hurting Kind, and I started just going through it. And this poem randomly I like opened to, excuse me, it connected with my excitement for Crow Planet. So I want to share it with you now. And I'm hoping that in the future, as I do this more, if I have a poem that I want to share that aligns with something I'm really excited about reading or I'm currently reading, I'm going to call it Poetry in the Margins, and it's going to just be a segment randomly put into videos. So this is the debut of Poetry in the Margins with Books and Bocadillos. And this poem from the collection The Hurting Kind is titled Privacy. Here goes. On the black wet branches of the linden, still clinging to the umber leaves of late fall, two crows land. They say stop, and still I want to make them into something they are not. Odin's ravens, the Bruja's eyes. What news are they bringing of our world to the world of the gods? It can't be good. More suffering all around. More stinging nettles and toxic blades shoved into the scarred parts of us. The minor ones underneath the trees. Rain comes while I'm still standing, a trickle of water from whatever we believe is beyond the sky. The crows seem enormous, but only because I am watching them too closely. They do not care to be seen as symbols. A shake of a wing, and both of them are gone. There was no message given, no message I was asked to give, only their great absence and my sad privacy, returning like the bracing, empty wind on the black, wet branches of the linden. That is Privacy by Ada Limon in her collection, The Hurting Kind. So back to my November pilot possibilities. I also intend to read Indigenous Peoples Lit, and I have 4 Indigenous Indigenous pieces of literature that I want to read. One is The Yield by Tara June Winch. So I actually started The Yield a couple of years back. maybe like 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. I didn't finish it. I DNF'd it. Not because I didn't like it. I actually was really loving the writing. I thought it was a great book. I couldn't finish it at the time because it was needing more of me. And maybe I was burned out. Maybe I didn't have the energy that it required, the like emotional capacity, the mental capacity. I needed to put it down, and I'm feeling like maybe it's time to give it another try. And in the spirit of finishing by fall, which is kind of what I've just named what I'm doing here, is just in this fall, one of my goals is to finish books I've started. So this is one of those books that I've started that I haven't finished and I want to finish by the fall. So The Yield by Tara June Winch. It's from an Australian Indigenous peoples group perspective. Takes place in Australia. It's about a family. It's about Indigenous culture in Australia. So I am really looking forward to getting back into it. The second one is this one here. It was a new release this year. I got it in hardcover because this author is a must-buy author for me. I read her debut, her first novel, The Firekeeper's Daughter. Absolutely loved it. 5 stars, loved her. Put her on my automatic buy author books. And her second book, her sophomore novel, is Warrior Girl Unearthed. The author is Angeline Boulley. I love Angeline Boulley. I love her writing. I am looking forward to reading this one. The back of this says, "Sometimes the truth shouldn't stay buried." Dr. Lirwa, may my intern hold the blade? The museum guy slides the flint blade into the notched handle before handing it to me. Resting in my palm, the blade is heavier than I thought. Substantial would be the right word. I wrap my fingers around the handle. It's a good weapon. It fits me. I am filled with an urge to steal, to run as fast as I can. With the treasure, I turn the knife handle before gently placing it on Lirwa's open palm. I don't want to steal the blade. It belongs to the warrior girl. I want to steal her. So, yeah. The inside part of the flap says, Perry Firekeeper Birch has always known who she is, the laid-back twin, the troublemaker, the best fisher on Sugar Island. Her aspirations won't ever take her far from home, and she wouldn't have it any other way. But as the already striking number of missing Indigenous women continues to rise, as her family becomes embroiled in a high-profile murder investigation, and as greedy grave robbers seek to profit off what belongs to her, to her Anishinaabe tribe, Perry begins to question everything. In order to reclaim the inheritance for her people, Perry has no choice but to take matters into her own hands. She can only count on her friends and allies, including her overachieving twin and a charming new boy in town with unwavering morals. Old rivalries, sister secrets, and botched heists will not stop her from uncovering the mystery before the ancestors and missing women are lost forever. The #1 New York Times bestselling author Angeline Boulley takes us back to the world of Firekeeper's Daughter in this high-stakes mystery about the power of discovering your stolen history. So, Warrior Girl Unearthed. I have this hardcover and I have the audiobook, so this will be a good, very manageable read between both audio and hardcover paper copy. And where am I putting this? Put this right here. Then I have this book. This is Snake Falls to Earth by Darcie Little Badger. This is more of a reread. So this book I read last year. This was one of those books that won a library award, and my library was promoting this book, and that's how I heard of it. So I heard about it through our library system, and I I listened to the audiobook. I got it from the library and on Libby, on the Libby app, and I loved it so much. I absolutely had to have the hardcover copy. So it is a beautiful copy. I love it. There's like a little bit of gold. It's hard to tell, but there's like a little bit, just a tiny little bit of gold on the front cover. NPR says this is utterly magical, and I would agree. BuzzFeed says atmospheric and lyrical, a gorgeous work of art. I would agree. The inside cover says, Nina, a Lipen girl in our world, she's always felt that there was something more out there. She still believes in the old stories. Ollie is a cottonmouth kid from the land of spirits and monsters. Like all cottonmouths, he's been cast from home. He's found a new one on the banks of the bottomless lake. Nina and Ollie have no idea the other exists, but a catastrophic event on Earth and a strange sickness that befalls Ollie's best friend will drive their worlds together in ways they haven't been in centuries, and some will kill to keep them apart. Darcie Little Badger introduced herself to the world with Elatso. In A Snake Falls to Earth, she draws on traditional Lipan Apache storytelling structure to weave another unforgettable tale of monsters, magic, and family. It is not to be missed. And this book takes place in South Texas. So I live in South Texas, and I could see the place. There's a strong sense of place. And they're in a rural Texas community. I could see that community. I could picture driving through it. I could feel the culture. I really loved it. This is fantasy. This is definitely, there's elements of fantasy in here. It does feel magical. There's shape shifting, yeah. And I really, really enjoyed this book. I recommend. I gave this 5 stars. I loved it so much. I want to reread it, and if I have time, I would love to reread this book. So, hoping that maybe as time allows, I'll be able to start rereading it. This is Snake Falls to Earth by Darcie Little Badger. It is YA fantasy. Then the fourth book that I have for my Indigenous Peoples Lit picks is Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones. I've never read Stephen Graham Jones, always wanted to read his work. I've decided to go with Mongrels as my first book to read by him because there's a cryptid readathon happening, and I thought that Mongrels would go well with the cryptid readathon that I wanted to participate in, and I felt like it was a good way to combine both the cryptid reading with the Indigenous Peoples Lit. So if you don't know the cryptid readathon, I will link the channel host and you can follow them. This readathon is being hosted by Crystal from Fiber Artsy, Jason from Jason's Weird Reads, and Sin from Sin's Book Nook. I encourage you to follow them and check out their announcement videos and their TBRs. But Mongrels is essentially about a monster werewolf kind of a story. Let me... The summary says it's a spellbinding, darkly humorous coming-of-age story about an unusual boy whose family lives on the fringe of society and struggles to survive in a hostile world that shuns and fears him. He was born an outsider like the rest of his family, poor yet resilient. He lives in the shadows with his Aunt Libby and Uncle Darren, folk who stubbornly make their way in a society that does not understand or want them. They are mongrels, mixed blood, neither this nor that. The boy at the center of Mongrels must decide if he belongs on the road with his aunt and uncle or if he fits with the people on the other side of the tracks. For 10 years, he and his family have lived a life of late night exits and narrow escapes, always on the move across the South to stay one step ahead of the law. But time is drawing near when Darren and Libby will finally know if their nephew is like them or not. And the close calls they've been running from for so long are catching up fast now. Everything is about to change. A compelling and fascinating journey, Mongrels alternates between past and present to create an unforgettable portrait of a boy trying to understand his family and his place in a complex and unforgiving world. A smart and innovative story, funny, bloody, raw, and real, told in a rhythmic voice full of heart. Mongrels is deeply moving, sometimes grisly novel that illuminates the challenges and tender joys of a life beyond the ordinary in bold and an imaginative new way. Um, so I'm really looking forward to this. Um, I have it on audio and e-book, so that's how I'll be reading that one. And there's also the more Montgomery readathon. So I will be reading Jane of Lantern Hill by Lucy Maud Montgomery for that readathon, and that's the one book that I hope to read from for that. And for Day of the Dead, I feel like I want something fun. I want something really, really fun, really, really easy, really, really just, I guess, just maybe sweet. I kind of want a happily ever after. I feel like I've been reading a lot of dark things, a lot of horror, a lot of darkness, and I feel like I want a little bit of a breath of fresh air. So I am going to try to read this one, Ramon and Julieta by Alana Quintana Albertson. The subheading says Love and Tacos. And the blurb says a passionate and joyful romance about honoring family legacies, celebrating your heritage, the importance of community, and the power of love. This is by New York Times bestselling author Chanel Clayton. I'm not going to read the back, except for this top part here that says, when fate and tacos bring Ramon and Julieta together on the Day of the Dead, the star-crossed pair must make a choice, accept the bitter food rivalry that drives them apart or surrender to a love that consumes them. So this is two feuding families, very much like a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. And I think that the two feuding families are like food restaurant owners, and they're star-crossed lovers. I love. Hopefully, this is this is not a tragic Romeo and Juliet. Hopefully, their love survives all trials and tribulations. But I need a little bit of romance in my world right now, in my reading. And then also, in relation to Day of the Dead, I am currently reading To Kill a Mockingbird. I used to work in hospice, and I am a social worker. I would visit my patients as they were dying, and sometimes when I had kindred spirits who loved to read bookworms as clients, we always kind of got along. And I had this one client. She was elderly. She was a great reader. She loved Agatha Christie. I still think of her very, very fondly. I spent a lot of really great times with her. And because we shared a love of reading, we had like our own little book club together. I did that with some of my clients who like to read. I would read books with them. And so sometimes I would read to them. Sometimes they would read and I would read separately on my own. And we'd come back and we'd meet and talk about it, talk about what we were reading together. And so with this one client, I had a little private book club with her. And once when we were talking about books and life and reading and life and reflecting on what we were reading, I asked her, I told her that I was wanting to read the 1,000 Books Before You Die. There was a book that came out Actually, I have it right here. This book came out A Thousand Books to Read Before You Die, A Life-Changing List by James Mustich. And I'm actually reading from this list. But when this book when this book first came out, I told her that I was going to be reading from this, and I asked her what what is a book that you think I need to read before I die? What is a book that you would tell people you need to read this book before you die? And she said, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. And I told her I'd never read To Kill a Mockingbird. It wasn't ever something we picked up in school. So she recommended it, and I'm reading it now, and I'm thinking about her. So this is my way of honoring her for Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, All Souls Day. And then also, I mentioned this in another video, but Zoraida Cordova's The Inheritance of Orquidea Divina. I haven't gotten to it yet. It's still something that's on my TBR. I had initiated that last year, didn't finish it. Again, another book that I want to finish for my Finish by Fall reading goal. So I'm going to be picking that one up sometime in the month of November. And that is it. Those are all the books, that I hope to be reading in the month of November. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble on about books I'm excited about. Let me know if you read any of the books that I've mentioned today. Let me know if you have some recommendations for books that pair well with them. And hope you have a happy Halloween. Feliz Dia de los Muertos. Happy November. Happy reading. Hasta la próxima.